So, for those of you that haven't been keeping up with the One Piece TCG news, we're going to be having a new ban list coming up in March. I think it's when they're going to announce it. It's yet to be seen if it impacts the West earlier than the East because we're behind on the release schedule. But these are they're going to be my predictions for the ban list, what I would ban, and what I think Bandai is going to eventually be banning. As you can see, there's three leaders that I think are going to be potential issues for Bandai to wants to address at the very least. Doflamingo, Teach, and Luffy, the green purple Luffy at the very least. I think these leaders, I think Doflamingo has been dominant in Japan, and I think Teach has been very very strong as well. Only being held back by both Doflamingo and the green purple Luffy, which means I definitely think Doflamingo is going to be taken down a notch, and something is going to get banned out of the deck, pretty much for sure. Mostly because I think Bandai is not satisfied with the deck being as strong as Doflamingo has been for so long. I personally think nothing needs to get banned. I don't think we're at the point where Lucci, like Staged Lucci and like Black Maria, RP Law. But I definitely think Doflamingo is going to be taking a hit. And because Doflamingo is going to be taking a hit, I think Green Purple Luffy and Marshall D. Teach are going to be taking a hit as well. And finally, I placed Gecko Moria here, not because I think Gecko Moria decks are destroying the meta, or also not because I think Gecko Moria decks will destroy the meta if something gets banned out of these other three decks. However, I do think Gecko Moria as a card is the strongest card that's currently unbanned in the One Piece TCG. I think the strongest card of all time was definitely Great Eruption. But I think Gecko Moria is incredibly over-centralizing for black as a color. We'll talk about that a little bit in more depth in a little while. But I think Gecko Moria, the card is just too strong. It centralizes black decks in a way that I think is unhealthy. And I think that the card has been so strong for so long that given the way Bandai has been designing like black boss monsters for the past couple sets, it makes me think that they're finally going to ban Gecko Moria. So, other cards that people have been talking about are NL, Skeptic Kid, Ice Age as cards that are not banned, and also like maybe Sakisuki and Moby Dick getting unbanned. We'll start by talking about NL and Kid. I don't think either of these cards are serious threats to get banned. I think there's a 0% chance NL gets banned, NL the leader. The leader is just not strong enough. Even if it is the best generic yellow leader, there are also very good generic leaders for other colors. I think that's a different issue, but I don't think NL is getting banned anytime soon. I don't think NL has been a strength where he should have been banned ever, which also contributes to the fact that I don't think the deck has seen enough play to the point where Bandai would even ban it if it was broken, but I don't even think the deck is broken. And now, yes, is Captain Kid. The card is strong. It's not even the strongest green card. Like, it's not Howdy Jones. Yes, the card is good. It's definitely like a meta-dependent card. It's good against Doflamingo. It's good against Green Purple Luffy from what I've heard and what I've seen. The card is not getting banned. It's not strong enough. The card is fair, I would say. You need to... It demands setup. It demands a lot from your deck building to be able to play Kid in like a suitable fashion on curve. If you don't play him with a blocker, he just dies. That's not good enough for a card. At the very least, not in OP 10, OP 11. Ice Age. I think Ice Age is definitely a strong card. It's very obviously it's very well costed. -5 cost for 1 Dawn is good, but I think that the card is just a very good enabler in black. Ice Age has a hidden cost that I don't think a lot of people think about. That is that it costs 1 card to play Ice Age. However, I think Ice Age's cost of you having to play with 1 less card for the rest of the game. It's mitigated a lot of the time because the decks that run Ice Age typically run the 8-cost Gecko Moria. And Gecko Moria is, since release on OPO6, has been sort of like a value factory. You play Gecko Moria, you grab your Rebecca. If you need hand, you grab a Searcher. And then Rebecca draws you one card, the Searcher draws you one card. And then you're up in cards for whatever reason. I think Ice Age is a good design in the sense that it complements the color well. Black, I would say, generally speaking, is a color that trades card advantage for tempo. However, a few outliers in black, including Gecko Moria, 4-cost Rebecca, 4-cost Lucci, generally have been tending to let black play the card game, like the card advantage game, a lot better than the color should have any right to do. I think Ice Age might get hit. It's not like a 0%, but I don't think Ice Age is a problem. I think it's a card that does what black is supposed to do. And I think that the problem cards are what is enabling Ice Age. And then finally, Sakazuki and Moby Dick. I'll start with Sakazuki because this is a little bit easier to say. Sakazuki would be insanely crazy today. If you think Rob Lucci clears board easy, Sakazuki will do it twice as easy and a lot more consistently. Sakazuki is just a beast of a deck, incredibly consistent. I don't know what else to say. I think the people that are saying that Sakazuki might get him banned, I think are on crack. The deck is, I mean, I don't know. It was a blast to play, but there's not a lot of counterplay for your opponent bottom decking all of your cards every single turn. Obviously, the Lyric effect gives him consistency on top of that. The Lyric is just insane. I loved playing Sakazuki while I could. I'm glad it's banned. And finally, Moby Dick. I think Moby Dick is the only card in the ban list that could come off the ban list without the threat of Newgate centralizing the meta. However, I don't think Moby Dick will get him banned, mostly because it's an unfound card. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I also don't think Moby Dick is going to be touched. Mostly because of that. I think there's no need to unban it, generally speaking. Now, what about restrictions? Bandai in the past has restricted some cards to 1 copy per deck, and I think if a card is getting restricted, it's going to be Gangbang Giant. Mostly because restricting Gangbang Giant would generally fix the only issue I currently have with it, which is it's sort of like a very, very crappy gameplay pattern when a purple deck passes, let's say Plouffe, but it could use Plouffe as a stand-in for any purple Straw Hat deck. They pass with 3 Dawn up or 4 Dawn up and 5 cards in hand, and even if you swing like 20 straight to their face, there is a non-zero chance that they are not dying, and that is just ridiculous. This card sort of avoids a lot of the defensive part of the game. It ignores hand restrictions. Like, the card essentially is a 1-cost 2k counter that draws you a card and gives another card in your hand 2k counter and draw a card for 0. Obviously, it has a cost, which is Dom -2, but it's not easy to rush purple decks fast enough to the point where the Dom -2 actually signifies something. There's pretty much no... I don't want to say there's no counterplay around Gangbang Giant, because you can obviously hit certain breakpoints to make them use the Gangbang Giant, to make them overcommit into the Gangbang Giant. But the card is just, it's too good. It's too good at what it does. And like I said, I don't think it's healthy to keep a card at 4 where there is a chance in this game, at the very least, where when you swing 20 at your opponent with 6 cards in hand and they don't lose to that attack. I think that should always be like a losing position. And I think limiting Gangbang Giant to 1 would fix this problem. I think Gangbang Giant at 1 would be fine. It's sort of like a defensive card, which means if you don't see it in curve, it's still good. And yes, I think that's pretty much it. Now, this is the hill that I'm willing to die on. Pudding and Moria are just two cards that suck. They suck to play. They suck to play against. We'll start with Pudding. I would like to see Pudding banned because the card is some fun. You play Pudding and somebody's walking up from the table complaining about the game. Now, I've seen a lot of people defend Pudding in the sense that saying that Pudding is a good card to counter decks that hoard hand advantage. And while that is true, one, if those decks exist, which they do, sort of NL kind of plays this way, definitely Black Yellow Luffy. Pudding definitely works well against those decks. However, only one color has access to Pudding, which means these decks play the exact same way into every single other color. And additionally, Pudding not only punishes your opponent for hoarding hand, it punishes your opponent for playing the game sometimes. The fact that instead of discarding or choosing what cards go into the deck until they have 5, the fact that they shuffle their entire hand into the deck and draw 5 new cards means that sometimes you will have a losing game, play Pudding, and instantly win the game because your opponent draws nothing. And not only that, I think it's just incredibly punishing in a way that sometimes you will play Pudding because playing Pudding is your only out. This is very frequent into NL, where Doflamingo, for example, has a rough matchup into NL. Sometimes you play Pudding when they have 6 cards in hand or even 5, just because you know or you expect them to have like a heal, like a Yamato, a Katakuri, an Ace. And if they don't draw any of those 3 cards, they instantly lose the game. And I don't think that leads to any type of healthy gameplay loop. Obviously, it's good to punish decks for hoarding hand, and I think that maybe Bandai could try and print different variants of Pudding. But I think that this effect of shuffling the hand is too annoying and too unhealthy to play against. I don't think Bandai should keep legal a playable card that when somebody plays this card, somebody's walking off the table feeling robbed. And I think that Pudding is definitely one of those cards. A very, very unfun card with a lot of like hidden power. And then Gecko Moria. I talked about Gecko Moria a little bit before, but essentially the card does everything. It's the strongest card that we have legal in the card game. Over centralizing for the color black as a whole. The card essentially does everything. If you need removal, this card removes your opponent's board. If you need to draw cards because you're behind in card advantage, this card draws 2 cards while setting up a blocker. If you need defense, this card blocks and draws you a card. If you need to go wide, this card essentially becomes like a 9k attacker, a 6k attacker, and sometimes a 3k attacker, sometimes with a blocker in the middle. And finally, if you need to go tall for whatever reason, then this card swings 9 for 8 Dawn, which is essentially the highest attack playable 8 Dawn card hits for. The card is insane. It could cost more. It could swing for less. It doesn't really matter. I think that Moria's Time in the Sun has come to an end. I definitely think this card should get banned. And additionally, black cards a lot of good 8-cost cards that are not seeing play because Moria does everything. Like if you need an 8-cost that removes the board, 8-cost Sabo exists. If you need an 8-cost that generates card advantage, 8-cost Isho exists. Unfortunately, these cards see no play because Gecko Moria is just insane and does everything a lot better. And also, I think Gecko Moria is in a weird position where it forces black, because it's so strong, it forces black decks into like playing Moria pile style decks where you slap like 25,000 Navy cards, like a brand new Searcher, Rebecca, sometimes Roblucci if you can fit him in, Helmapo. And I definitely think it's unhealthy for the color as a whole and for the game as a whole. I think Moria should have gone banned when we got Sakazuki banned. But Bandai didn't, and I think Moria should have gone banned when the stage for the Roblucci and RP Law, the leader, was banned. Were banned, sorry. And the card didn't get banned at that point either. But I think it's time for Moria to wave goodbye. It's been way too strong for way too long, and very over centralizing for a lot of decks. and this is not even talking about what the card does to Black Yellow Luffy, which essentially means, I mean, it turns the deck into a tier 1 deck pretty much on its own. The card is just too strong for what it does. I don't think there's anything else I can say about Gecko Moria that people haven't experienced. I do think, however, that it is at a point, we've gotten to a point where other decks do stuff that's comparable to playing Gecko Moria. That I don't think that means that Gecko Moria should still be in the game. I think that Black should diversify as a color and play other things on other cards. I don't want to be playing against Gecko Moria for 3 more years. I think that Bandai is probably going to ban this card at this time, mostly because of the type of design that they have been going for with Black decks. Seeing the 7 Cost Goku or cards that sort of fit the Moria role sort of gives me the hope that they are finally deciding to ban this card. Now, this leads me to my next point. Boat also sucks. Yes, Newgate is a fun deck, and if you really like playing Newgate, Boatbeard is probably what you want to be playing right now. However, while I don't think Newgate is set up with Boat is broken, because I think a lot of decks would keep it in check. I don't think people want to play against Boat. I think people like Newgate, and it's fine that they like it. I definitely think that this card will not concentrate the meta around Newgate. However, I don't think it's a fun experience for Newgate to instantly kill you with 2 searchers, a 7-cost ace, and like one other guy. I think that a lot of decks are not going to be able to play into Boatbeard, and that I think it's my problem with the deck is that if you're going to be playing a deck that's good into Newgate, let's say they don't ban Pudding, you're playing a blue deck into Newgate, you're crushing Newgate. You're playing a black deck into Newgate, you're definitely crushing Newgate because you're removing everything every single turn, even the searchers. But if you're playing like a green deck into Newgate, then this is just pretty much GG. This card spells your doom. It's way too efficient for what it does. And just to rub salt in the wound, it has trigger, which means it's even more high rolly than it should be. I think Boat sucks as a design. I don't want the card to exist in the game. If the card was unbanned, maybe I wouldn't be advocating for Bandai to ban the card, but I definitely think that it doesn't need to get unbanned. Now, this is my ideal ban list. This is what I would ban if it were up to me. Obviously, putting Moria on Gangnam Giant, I would ban just on their merits alone. Like I said, I don't think they're restricting anything. Giant could be restricted. I would outright ban Gecko Moria and Charlotte Pudding. And when it comes to hits to Dofi and Teach and the new green purple Luffy, well, I'm obviously banning Giant anyways, but I think that would keep green purple Luffy in check, or at the very least lower its power level a little, make it more of a glass cannon type deck. I would ban Teach if I had to ban a Doflamingo card. I think Doflamingo's problem right now is not that the deck is solid or consistent. I think that the least fun games for Doflamingo, or at the very least involving Doflamingo, are the games where Doflamingo opens on like the odd curve, and they go like turn 1 Sengoku, turn 2 Teach into Jinbei something, turn 3 like Jinbei something plus Weevil or something like that because of the Teach effect, and then turn 4 they go Jozu, Weevil, something like that. And that curve is pretty much unstoppable. It's ridiculous. Like, a lot of decks don't have a way to interact with Teach early on efficiently, and it pretty much spells their doom. I think Teach is a deck that accelerates Dofi in a way that I think, I don't know, I don't want to say it's unhealthy, but it's definitely a bit too much. And I think that's what allows Doflamingo to go a little bit over the top. I think if you hit Teach, Doflamingo will be a solid tier 1.5, solid tier 2 deck. And I think that's a good spot for Doflamingo to be in. And then when it comes to Teach, probably unsurprising to anyone that's actually played against this card, even in testing, 5-cost Kuzan is just insane. The rate for this card is just ridiculous. It's like they sat down and they said, okay, well, we definitely want Teach to be played. Let's just print an insane card, and they chose to print this. This card is essentially Jesus Burgess, but for 5. It draws a card when you play it. However, this is what it mostly does, but it's also Van Augur that draws an extra card for 5, which is crazy. It would be the best card in Teach if the Kuzan didn't exist, if your Van Augur had like an on-play draw card and on KO draw card. But it's also sometimes Q, and it's also sometimes Lafitte, and it's also sometimes Rush Burgess. This card is just insanely flexible. Sometimes it's Vasco Shot. This card just does everything. It's an incredibly strong consistency piece. The fact that you literally cannot interact with it. It has a line of text that says, if your opponent does not attack with this card, you pretty much cannot interact with it. The card is insane, and more importantly, I think that Teach as a deck works without Kuzan. Obviously, it gets a lot weaker, but I think Teach's defining cards are what makes Teach is Jesus Burgess, the 10-cost Teach, and all the consistency pieces like the Lafitte, the stage, the Van Augur, the Lafitte, the stage, and the event, not the Van Augur. And I think Kuzan is just sort of like the cherry on top of all that. You can definitely ban Kuzan, and the deck will still feel like Teach in a way where banning Jesus Burgess definitely wouldn't. So I would ban Kuzan. However, this is what I think Bandai will eventually ban. Okay, so unfortunately my audio died for whatever reason. So I'm sorry for the cut. This is what I think Bandai will ban. Jinbei instead of Teach. Moria, obviously I've said my piece on Moria already. Gum Giant and Hachinozu, or Full OLED, whatever you want to call it. I've been playing a lot in the sim. Let's get started with Jinbei. I think Bandai are going to want to hit Doflamingo a little bit harder than just banning Teach. I think if you ban Teach, Doflamingo gets weaker, but it definitely still is a tier 1.5 or tier 2 deck. I think if you ban Jinbei, Boa, Weevil, or Law, the deck gets significantly weaker. I think if you hit Boa, the deck gets less consistent, and I think if you hit Law, the deck gets pretty much dies. I don't think Weevil is that big of a hit. It will be a hit if you ban it, but I think Jinbei is sort of like the sweet spot. People complain about Jinbei so much, which is definitely a point against the card staying out of the ban list. And I don't know. I think when Doflamingo high rolls you very, very hard, the problem is sort of like Teach or Law, because they either storm the board very, very fast because of Teach, or don't allow you to play anything because of Law. However, I think Teach and Law are cards that are sort of like more invisible in terms of power level. Like you don't really think Law is that broken because you don't play 4-cost cards or like characters. So I think Law's influence is a lot. It's felt a lot more in the deck building stages of the game. Jinbei, on the other hand, is sort of like these cards when once your opponent plays it, you're pretty much groaning. It feels very, very bad when Doflamingo gets Jinbei off the top when they play Perona on turn 1. And I don't know. I think it's going to be a solid hit. I definitely think Jinbei is weaker on Doflamingo's harder matchups. But the card is sort of like a very, very good card when Doflamingo is good. Like Doflamingo has a good matchup into Purple Luffy, and it's very good into Purple Luffy. But on the other side of the equation, like Doflamingo is not that good into Bonnie, for example, and Jinbei is very bad into Bonnie because it clogs your board and does nothing. So yeah, I think if Bandai is going to ban something out of Doflamingo, I thought it was going to be the 4-cost Law because of its deck building sort of implications. But they announced a 4-cost Law reprint, so I think that the next card in line is Jinbei. Now, Gecko Moria, like I said, I've said my piece. I don't think there's anything else I can add to it. I think it's a card that just warps deck building, and additionally, a lot of decks are just bad because they cannot fight 2 Gecko Morias in a row, which is something that's sort of unheard of for an 8-drop in this game. It was unheard of on OP06, and it's pretty much unheard of still today. So I think Gecko Moria is probably going to get banned, coupled with the fact that Black Hole Luffy is still good in the West. I know Japan is not that fond of Black Hole Luffy, generally speaking, but Black Hole Luffy is still putting up results today. even in a meta where there's like a very hostile deck to Black Hole Luffy in Teach. So yeah, I definitely think there's a non-zero chance that Moria gets banned, and I think Bandai is actually going to ban it this time. Now, Gangnam Giant, I don't think Gangnam Giant is getting banned because of the reasons that I said. I just think it's going to get banned because Green Purple Luffy is going to be, it's probably going to be taking a hit, and they're not banning Sanji and Pudding because it's a secret rare from the latest set. They're not going to ban the secret Luffy, and I think that the rest of the deck is just like random, like a random assortment of green and purple crap, straw hat crap. The only card that you can feasibly hit that's not from EBO2 is probably just Gum Gum Giant, and the card is very, very good, obviously, but it's a rare. It's cheap. It's not that splashy when you compare it to something like the Sanji and Pudding. So I think it's pretty much in line for the chopping block, and it has the additional health, like gameplay healthy benefits that I've mentioned before, where you can play against purple, and if they have 7 cards in hand, you can pretty much math the kill out like with any other color in the game. And finally, I think they're going to be hitting Teach. I'm actually, the card that I'm least sure of here is Full OLED. I think they're going to be hitting Teach, probably, because they're going to be hitting Doflamingo for sure, and I would say like 90%, I'm 90% on a hit to Green Purple Luffy, which means Teach is going to get better, which means they're probably banning something off of Teach. The problem with Teach is that you can either ban the 5-cost Kuzan, which is a secret rare from the latest, well, not the latest set for Japan, but it's a secret rare from a recent set that's not come out yet in the West, and it's going to be very, very new when the ban list gets announced, or maybe even it wouldn't. Maybe it's not even released yet. I'm not sure on the dates. So I don't think that they're going to ban Kuzan. And if you're not banning Kuzan, which I think is a card that should get hit, then you have either two options. You either ban the 10-cost Teach or the Burgess, and you kill the deck, or you try and kill the deck, which I don't think is happening because we're getting a Teach starter deck released next year. Or on the other hand, you can just try and hit the consistency pieces of the deck so that the deck's ceiling is as high as it is right now, but the deck's floor is a lot lower. And I think if you're going to be hitting any of the consistency pieces, you're probably going to be hitting the stage. The thing with the stage is that it's just, it's not splashy at all. It's like a cheap common or uncommon card from like OP09. And it's sort of like a very low impact card in terms of how people perceive it. Like, nobody's groaning because of stage. It feels fair. Blackbeard is trading like 1 card for consistency. However, the issue here is that Blackbeard is an insanely consistent deck, and that this card does pretty much everything. It finds your Kuzan, it puts your crap in the trash, it allows you to run whatever the crap you want because you can just put it in the trash with the stage or the leader ability. It fuels Kuzan, it fuels Burgess. The card does everything, which is, you know, obviously an issue. So I think if you're going to be nerfing some aspect of the consistency, instead of hitting Lafitte or the 1-cost event, I think hitting the stage is just the easier way out. Also, if you see one stage, you're going to be using the full OLED's effect for the rest of the game every single turn. I think that it might get a little bit repetitive for players in general. So these are my predictions for what Bandai is going to be banning, and these are my predictions for what I would like to see banned personally. I hope you enjoyed this video. If I skipped a card that you think is going to get banned, or I didn't talk about a card that you thought was maybe on the chopping block, feel free to let me know in the comments. I read every single comment. So yes, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I also hope Gecko Moria gets finally nuked out of existence.